I'm going to be checking the script a lot in this one. I find that the prefix a, aka a, fits and follows me a lot. It goes at the start of words and it means not or without. A lack. A lack. Sometimes it's ab, sometimes an. So like, I was anorexic, which means without appetite. I'm atheistic, meaning without religion. Asexual. Agender too, if you want, but I don't pretend to be part of that game. Aptly. Maybe autism means without autism. It doesn't, but if it did, then autism would be short for uber-typicalism. And to be haunted by so many A words asks me to internalize them as an identity, when I just understand it as a nothing. They're not data, they're differences from a false assumption. At best, they're subtractive data, negative data, existing inversely. But they only have to be that because of an initial fallacy, presuming that we are the things that we are A of. These elements really feel like absolute absences that don't necessarily yearn to be filled in. There's just nothing to describe. Data value 0. I don't know what element in me you're trying to refer to except as a data subtraction relative to external models. The need to explain oneself in absences only arises from the presumption of presences. And when you presume, you make a pres out of you and me. In my new appointment as pres, I decree an amendment where we stop fucking presuming defaults like that. It's the 0th amendment. I mean, I do it too, yeah. In the culture we know, it's nearly impossible to not categorize people as default straight cis majority status before we gather the extra data of which minority category they belong to. Maybe we're entering a century of getting past that bit, and we can thank the last century of feminist scholars and indigenous communities and everyone who exists outside of the default. My different A's have differing levels of severity and justifiability, the validity and normalcy of a specimen without this feature. I can't argue for anorexia. Well, I was a lot healthier, but that one's a really bad example for my theory. A person without an appetite is a person with a problem, a deficit. But even stating that does involve the data that persons require sustenance. I think anorexia is upsetting for me to mention and maybe even detractive, but to me it is instinctively related to what I'm getting at, and it would have been dishonest to omit. The lack of appetite did feel like one of these nothings. Why should I have one? This does not, and I cannot, describe all anorexias. It can't always simply be an absence of appetite just to match the etymology. It might be an additional present complex atop someone's present appetite. The other absences I've mentioned are more related to sociality. There's other humans' input and interaction in them and are not problems. So bloody atheism. Note that agnosticism is also an A for Gnosticism. Atheism is a lot less severe than anorexia, but like, why is it even a category? It's understandably our 0 state. If we have no information on the religion of someone, then that's basically the same as atheism or at least agnosticism. They say there are no atheists in foxholes, except for the foxes. People came up with religion and made it so default that a lack of it is denoted as a group. It doesn't mean anything to be atheistic except being untheistic. So in a theoretically just logic, it's a redundant descriptor. I'd rather describe the elements I do have. Atheism is a religion drop-down box, left blank and bypassed. Maybe it would have been more engaging to have an actual drop-down box animation there. I was gonna do that, but there wasn't a red asterisk next to it, so I bypassed it. Okay, let's do the dubious, mysterious minority, the asexuals now. How strange it must be to just not have the sexuality data point. Have you ever had to explain asexuality? Here's how you do it. You say, sexuality. Yeah? Yeah, not that. Aren't children asexual? Like, we start out asexual? To be honest, they're probably not entirely, but at least a higher proportion. You see what I'm getting at there? Before you felt sexual attraction, that's the status. Fine. I need to find something that's definitely asexual. Okay, you know what's definitely asexual? Hangers. Yes, I'm choosing to relate to and appeal to inanimate objects, animate objects, because they're more understandable than you lot. They have no present sexuality factor to describe. I couldn't use foxes in this one because they shag a lot, but hangers are still things. We don't go presuming something about them without that data actually being present. All they do is hang and hold. Oh damn, I really am a hanger. Or am I a tiny grey cylinder with nothing on it? In the script, that cylinder was actually a die with no values on it. Because I know I've got one of those somewhere, but I just couldn't find it. I ransacked everywhere until immediately after filming, it was in the first place that I looked that I already thought it was. I've had that since childhood. I guess I kept it around because I thought it would be a good prop in a video where you want to show something that always comes out zero. Maybe the more specific I get about what I am, the smaller and further from humanity the related example I can cite. Because ultimately what I relate to is nothing. The concept, nothing. Nothing gets me. It's got no thing. I think my rhetoric in this video is very disheveled or a-heveled, because it has to communicate in a world of communication. But I get what I mean. This is how I see stuff and myself, and I'm lowering myself to language in order to tell you it. My ideal body type, nothingness. Truly this must be what they call euphoria. In existence, immaterial, got no soul. Subtraction of full self is the way I feel whole. I am far from the first to approach absent identity. It's known under many names, kinda ironically. Many have this same self-understanding. Well, it's not really for me to say that many have the same self-understanding as me, but many have roughly the same outlook and choose different words for it, and thereby ironically construct a present identity for absence. I think it's by its very nature beyond what language can express, but not due to some epic complexity, but epic simplicity. It's not more than language can express, it's less. If that statement didn't quite make sense, exactly. How come we're assumed to be things and eventually offered other things, then have to define as not any of those things? The box outside all of the boxes. Answer the rhetorical question, Colin. Because epistemology, because information, science, language, understanding are all born within this structure. But my theoretical world where we assess people only by what data is present makes me really easy to understand. There's nothing here but a velvet voice and a shoe-like face. If you're getting massive non-binary vibes, yeah, but that's just a massive lack of a binary vibe. Why should those elements be present? Don't ask why a specimen differs from the norm in a group of specimens. Just approach the case-by-case present data, the individual. Oh shit, am I Google douche? This is like Google douche. This is idealistic individualism. See, it's pretty close to what tedious libertarians get at with their rejection of identity politics. I do, in my self-understanding, reject identity politics, possibly because I'm white male enough to do so. I do think that's rad to do in oneself, acknowledge a vacuum. But if that vacuum is pointed outwards, it sucks. Other people's identities are their rights, and they're right about them. Gender critical is a really important thing to be, of oneself and nobody damn else. Let them do it. I know my rant has got a bit absurd and amorphous, and I think that's fitting. Why would you ever presume it to be morphous, President Ass? Shit, that was a wild one. If you can relate, let's start an identity and then reject it. So, don't forget to ascribe. If you liked this video, what do you want me to do about it?